Right, this is gonna be a really short video. It's late, I should have done it from Sunday night. The reason why I'm doing it today, 3 or 4 days late, is actually I had a really bad problem with my eye. Still not resolved, but at least it's manageable now. And you can see it's kind of red and swollen, but I really couldn't do a video with it looking the way it did. I probably have to wear some dark glasses or an eye patch or something. I was grinding some metal and I got into it on Friday, and since that it's just been a nightmare. But went to the doctor and getting on top of it now. So I said, let me still just knock it out quickly. I'm just gonna keep it really short though. Let's just focus on the main points. First and foremost, I cannot explain how happy I was when Leclerc won. I mean, this is Ferrari at Monza. It's literally the definition of a fairy tale, right? So, absolutely well deserved as well. He drove well. Masterclass in tire preservation. I mean, when you look back on some of the slow-mos after, and I mean, luckily because I have F1 TV, I can really get into the analysis of it and watch what the videos and slow them down and everything. And let me tell you this, man. When you look at his steering inputs on the high-speed corners, how gently is, how he opens the steering back out early, getting the car back straight to preserve the front tires. When you look at him in the low-speed corners, how he tries to do all of his braking in a straight line, how he turns the car in and then waits until the car straightens up before he puts on the power, so he's not putting in the whole heap of side load into the tires. I mean, that literally is that term masterclass might be a cliche, but it doesn't mean it's not true. Masterclass in smooth, consistent lap times and saving the tires. I mean, proper drive. 100% congratulations to him. I'm very happy for him. I like Ferrari and I really like Leclerc. Very happy for him. Sainz, I think, was good as well, because the Ferrari is making steps. I made reference to that a couple of times. Ferrari is making steps, not necessarily there yet, and certainly not at the level of McLaren, but in this race certainly they're better than Red Bull and Mercedes, and they're not as fast as McLaren, because at no point in time was Leclerc actually lap time wise faster than Piastri. So we'll get to why I think Piastri and Norris lost. But that's a separate issue. That doesn't take away from what Leclerc did. Great drive, running those hard tires for almost 30 laps. Fantastic result. Give credit where credit is due. Brilliant drive. And well done to Ferrari. Decent job, as I said, by Sainz. Different driving style, and so he kind of chewed up his tires a little bit more. His left front was going just as it was on the McLarens, and that hurt him a little, especially in the later stages of the race. But still, good drive. Ferrari showed good pace. Credit to them. Interestingly enough, not that far off in the manufacturers championship either, or constructors championship, I should say. So possibly an interesting dynamic emerging here. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, still plenty of races left in the season. So plenty of chances for Red Bull to turn it around, but also plenty of chances to Ferrari and McLaren to attack. So it's really wide open at this point. Let's look at McLaren now. I'm very conflicted. I'm very conflicted in my thoughts on McLaren. On the one hand, and I've even kind of said it before, but I don't mean I can't change my mind. On the one hand, I think some team orders would be warranted, meaning on purely racing terms and team orders and winning and politics and how F1 should be run as a business, team orders are more than justified at this point. The fact is, McLaren has every opportunity to win the Constructors' Championship and most likely will. And Lando Norris has a chance of winning the Drivers' Championship. Now, it's certainly not as certain as the Constructors, but it's a strong possibility. And in that scenario, it would not be even remotely unreasonable to expect some team orders to come into play. Having said that, and apparently well, so far anyway, no team orders are going to come into play, or not in the way we traditionally would expect them to. Um, Having said that, and not seeing team orders, it's also not necessarily a bad thing just from a pure racing standpoint. The fact of the matter is, in F1, if it should be a meritocracy, and the fastest man should win. And if your teammate is faster than you and is ahead of you, or has managed to pass you fairly, um, you know, who's to say that they shouldn't win too? You know, so it's a bit of a double-sided sword for me. As a racer, I want to see the fastest man win, but also as a F1 fanatic and a disciple of it for so many years, I also want to see, you know, a real championship fight. Now, let's look at that championship fight just briefly. And I mean, I could play devil's advocate and say that Piastri is closer to Norris than Norris is to Verstappen. Think about that. So, in terms of points. So, you know, it's not like it's something cast in stone at this point. Who knows what Piastri can pull out of the bag as the season progresses. But at the same time, you can't help but look at some of the decisions that the team is making either, which I think in all of this going on, is probably the thing I have the most problem with. I've called into question many times the pit strategies. I've called into question the ultimate lack of logic of like what they did in Hungary, where, you know, they set, based on pit strategy, they set up Norris to be ahead, and then at the end tells him no, swap to Piastri. That was just ultimately idiotic. In this race, I'm not sure why they pitted Piastri when they did. Yes, he was worried about the left front, but the reality is his lap times weren't really falling. And whereas Ferrari had less to lose by rolling the dice, as in the worst they would have been would be third, whereas McLaren were juggling with a win, I still think that call was premature. I think they could have watched the lap time a little more with Piastri and let him run a little deeper into the race. Because what would have been really the harm in that? You know, if he had changed his tires a little later, he would just have been a little faster at the end because his tires would have been fresher, right? We're on a new set. So I'm not entirely convinced about that pit stop, because ultimately that pit stop is what brought Leclerc into the frame. You know, you can't argue against that. And I don't know. I think the drivers are being let down by the team. Now, the drivers are not, I wouldn't say they're blameless, because I think Norris, at this point, has to be, the word I would describe him as is naive, because he got a good start this time. He can't complain about the start, which has been, you know, his terrible weakness. He got a decent start, but frankly, he left himself open to Piastri. That was a very early braking event that he did, while Piastri was able to take him on the outside. That's a fact. Yes, it was a bit opportunistic on Piastri's part, and maybe even risky to consider your teammates on your first lap. Because that can be a discussion as well about, was that risk warranted by Piastri, because it could have gone so wrong. But at the same time, it was a good move, and a legitimate move, and it worked. And the reason why it worked is because Lando was very conservative in his braking. Now, is it that he was just complacent, and because he knew it was his teammate behind him, he decided to take that risk? Could be, but then that's where the naivety comes in, because is that a realistic expectation? Piastri is not a second fiddle type of guy. He's just not. His mentality, he's shown his mentality, he clearly wants to win. So I'm not sure what Lando's thinking is to say, well, oh, Piastri is just going to hang back and let me, you know, run my race. That wasn't going to happen. So I don't know. I think Lando he's kind of shooting himself in the foot in a lot of these races, right? And when you look at the gaps to Verstappen, he does not have the opportunity to do that. The chance of winning a race in F1 is hard. It took him very long. The chance of winning a world championship is almost like winning the lottery. You can't screw it up when you have the opportunity. And I fear that's what I see, I see Lando going down that path, right? And it's not that I necessarily want Verstappen to lose the championship. I want the person who wins the most to win the championship, right? That's fine. right? I don't have a problem with that. But I want it to be genuine and I want it to be deserved. You know what I mean? And I really think Lando is kind of he's making it hard to support him in what he's doing because he's just making some kind of questionable decisions. But it is what it is. Piastri, I thought, drove a good race. Didn't have the pace to attack Leclerc, even though he was ultimately faster. Yes, laps. Had the race gone on, yes, Leclerc's tires were falling off at that point, obviously. But I suspect Piastri's were going as well, because the rate at which he was closing started to slow down a little. Was the race longer? Could he have won? Maybe, probably. But the fact is, you know, it wasn't. It is what it is, and he just couldn't catch Leclerc in time. I still get blame that pit stop. That's my opinion. You may have a different view. Red Bull. Red Bull's woes continue. Now, Perez was close at this time to Verstappen, but at the same time, just like at the last race where I kind of tempered my praise of him with the fact that he lost positions, again he made Russell pass him. Yeah, he wasn't bad on the mediums, but he was nowhere on the hards. I just get the feeling that whereas the car is clearly not to Max's liking anymore, and that has brought Perez up a bit, he's still not. Again, it's almost like he's not also seizing the opportunity. He's just not he's not able to extract the most out of the car when the occasion calls for it. Just not impressed. I think Verstappen is frustrated. He still did okay. I mean, if you look at in fact, if you look at it from a championship perspective, purely with points, I think he actually probably is feeling a little relieved after this race, because it could have been, I mean, I think at one point we're facing a 19-point swing, and now it's an 8. So, you know, that's still not too shabby. And I think he's pretty happy about that. But it's clear that the car is not handling, it's not turning in the front, that very, very sharp front end that he likes, where the rear steps out and he can control it. It's clearly not happening. The car is understeer. Now, again, we can speculate about the brake situation. I'm not entirely convinced of it, as I said in the last, whereas I accept the possibility of it, I'm not entirely convinced of it. Because when you look at the corresponding decline in performance since Imola, where the upgrade package came in, you can kind of start to see the decline from there. And they won races after that in Spain and so on. So I'm not sure about it being just, because they're taking off the brake thing. Because there's no, again, if you're going to believe the FIA that McLaren and Mercedes don't have flexi front wings, why wouldn't you believe the FIA about the brakes? You can't have your cake and eat it too. So you can't on the one hand say the FIA is cheating to help Red Bull, but also cheating to help Mercedes and McLaren as well. You can't have it both ways. It's either the FIA is doing their job and, you know, they just made that rule change as a preemptive one, or they're cheating for everybody. But it can't be that them cheating selectively like that. I don't see that. That sounds conspiracy theorist to me. So I'm not into that, right? I also note that in terms of when we use the word cheating, also careful, because the fact is, even if Red Bull was using some sort of a brake, you know, bias system, the fact of the matter is, if you had to actually change the wording of a rule or add in something in a rule to conclusively say not to use this system, it means it wasn't really cheating. It's like a gray area. It would have fallen into like that Mercedes DAS system or the blown diffuser or whatever, where you change the rule eventually to outlaw it, but you can't literally point a finger and say, hey, they were cheating, right? That's wrong. So, you know, you have to also be careful when you do those things, right? So it's really up in the air for me with the Red Bull thing in terms of the brake. In terms of the aero now, there's no question that they've lost the aero balance. I mean, we can fall into because Newey is not there, and guess what? Who's to say we're wrong? Because the fact of the matter is that the aero balance of the car is gone. After that floor upgrade in Imola, the car went backward. There's talk about you know, inconsistencies between data for simulator versus on track. It sounds reminiscent of Mercedes issues. So it sounds to me like they're struggling with the aero balance. It sounds to me like they took a path that they need to probably reverse, and this was more than likely against Newey's judgment and advice. And the problem is that reversing it is going to be difficult because now they're going to be up against the budget cap. There's only so many kind of changes that they're going to be able to make. Plus, when you couple that with the wind tunnel restrictions that they're already under, I think they're finding themselves in a wicked spiral where they need to have some wind tunnel time and they need to have some kind of Adrian Newey-esque massaging of the package to get back some of the balance, and they have neither. And so they're kind of feeling their way around. Now, the guys that are there are not bad. Pierre Wache is very good, actually. And Enrique Balbo is like a genius. I have no illusion that it's not smart people that are trying to attack the problem. But I think that there's not, it's not like saying it's not going to be fixed or it can't be fixed. Because I am not entirely convinced that Red Bull isn't going to have some sort of a resurgence as the season goes on. It's possible, right? But right now, I don't see them as being a factor. They're definitely not there. In fact, I think without Verstappen being a driver, they'd be similar to where Perez is all the time or even behind. The fact is it's Verstappen who's probably pulling them up from 10th to 7th or 6th or whatever it is, right? So they're definitely going to need to look at what they're doing. Mercedes didn't have a great day, and the last couple of races, have been a little disappointing. Again, it's so the hypocrisy about talking about Red Bull with the brake, and yet when we see Mercedes kind of taking a couple steps back after the flexi-wing investigation, we don't say anything about that. But the fact is, I don't think Red Bull was running a brake bias system, and I don't think Mercedes had a flexible wing system. I think the fact is at this stage of the development race, some teams simply getting it right, and some are getting it wrong. The reality is we're right at the end of the development cycle. We're now literally pinching hundreds and in thousands of tenths, or rather tenths, hundreds and thousands of a second in terms of development. And so it's easy when you're at that kind of limit to just as easily go backward as it is forward. So I think whereas McLaren is getting it right, Ferrari got it wrong as well. If you recall, Ferrari did a bad floor upgrade and had to go back to the old one. They're now kind of recovering and starting back on an upward trend. Mercedes had gone forward but looked like they took a couple steps back. Let's see if they can also recover. We'll see. Again, Baku and those type of tracks are quite different. Singapore, very much, very different. So we'll see how they step there. But right now, they didn't do so great. Not so impressed. Let's see, who are... as I said, I want to really keep this short. I thought Magnussen had a great drive. He's not one of my favorite guys. I've already given my opinion on him, that he's a dirty driver. But I didn't think this particular penalty was deserved. Yeah, I think he made a mistake. I think he locked up. But I don't know if that would warrant penalty points. Honestly, I think he's kind of being a little bit judged based on his past rather than what actually happened. Because when I watched replay a couple of times, it just didn't look dramatic enough to warrant penalty points. You know what I mean? I thought that was a little harsh. Albon, great drive again. Colapinto wasn't bad. I was quite impressed. Maybe we just touch briefly on Antonelli in qualifying. Our free practice, I should say. That was a bit of a screw up. Lots of little things we could talk about, but let's keep it short. Let's cut it there. Looking forward to Baku.